control deck, so it's just really, really good card. I think arguably just the best of the weapons.
Yeah.
The God's weapons. I mean, I like Hammer of Porphyros a lot, but I think this is probably the best one. I also saw a Bident of Thassa deck yesterday.
Yeah.
That actually looked really, really impressive. Just a mono blue deck using Bident with Master of Waves, generating a lot of card advantage that way. So, I wouldn't say that any of the weapons are bad. White Weapon Spear of Heliod's perfectly good there. I think there will be a time and a place where Bow of Nylea is actually quite good as well. No, the weapons are bad. It's just trying to find a home for them because they're such unique cards. We've been playing Magic for over 10 years. I don't know how long you are. I don't want to date you too well. But I've been playing Magic for over 10 years. Never seen a card like these weapons before. They're really interesting, and they make deck building, I don't want to say difficult, but just more intricate.
I think the Hammer of Porphyros is the one that we've seen the closest to. But other than that, I think most of these cards, like, the Bident, for example, being a coastal piracy with a plus side, the Hammer having a couple different cards mushed together on it, but putting them all in one package, and the fact that they're also considered enchantments.
Yep. And artifacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the legendary enchantment artifact. A lot of text on that line in the middle.
Yeah. And it's, it makes them really interesting. Fighting against them, you can fight against them multiple different ways, but they do really change the way the games are played. And again, I'm going to be really interested to see if Musser does draw Whip in this matchup, how it has an effect on the game. Because again, the lifelink, you can argue how important it's going to be. How much does he use that activated ability? Will that have an impact on the game? We're not going to know, but we're certainly going to find out here as we're going to be underway shortly. Adrian Sullivan, Cedric Phillips, Star City Games Open Series here in Cleveland, Ohio, my hometown. If you are joining us early this morning, we do appreciate it. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter at SCG Live, hashtag SCGCLE for your tweets, as we're going to crown a champion here soon.
That's right. Now, I know that one of the things I have been loving about this weekend is, you've called me a red mage many times, and I do like my red, but I have been excited to see the format get such a breath of fresh air in it. It's like a little shot in the arm, I think, to Standard, and we're coming very close to the Pro Tour, so yeah, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, next weekend is going to be the big one there. Can't wait to see what all the teams do show up with. Of course, a very heavy interest in what Team SCG is going to put together with all of those Hall of Famers. Maybe Brad Nelson will get him to play a green deck. Who knows what's going to happen there. Really interested to see exactly what teams are going to put together for that tournament. You saw a lot of innovation at Pro Tour Dragon's Maze. People even sleeved up the old Maze's End deck. There will be some gambles out there. I know you talked about Turbo Fog yesterday. Woo. Who knows? Who knows? There are some very obvious decks out there. You've got Mono Red, you've got Green White, you've got Esper, you've got any Revelation deck, honestly. You see Dan can take a mulligan down to 6 here. But I really want to see what those guys are going to get their hands on and really, really peel back the layers in this format.
I know that while it is not as shiny and lustrous as the Pro Tour, I will be battling in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the SCG.
Okay, next weekend.
And I would love to have been in Dublin, close quite a few times this last season, but instead I will be fighting in Wisconsin. So if you want to see some real brewing, come to Milwaukee.
Yep. You got something there? Maybe write an article about it?
Maybe we'll see. It's mostly I'm just half stealing a joke from Joey Pascoe, who was like, yeah, the Brewers are going to be in Milwaukee. Wah, wah, wah.
Well, again, I'm always looking for just new takes on decks, some innovation in this format. Again, you look at, one of the things I like to do when I look at the overview of a format, I like to look at how formats start and how they end, and how you kind of get to where you get. One format I always look at was the Standard format where Illusions was a deck, and then by the end of it, it was Blue-White Delver, and we could have never, I don't think we would have ever gotten to Blue-White Delver if it weren't for Phantasmal Bear and Friends starting the show, and that actually being a pretty good deck, and then we find our way to Delver, and I remember when Delver gets released, people look at that card and they're just like, who cares, just a 1/1, moving on. And then the first person, I'm sure the first person who played that and had it flipped got mocked a lot by his friends and by people he was playing against, and who's laughing now?
It's funny because I know Patrick Chapin and I were talking about how we both were running Rune Chanter's Pike and Invisible Stalker. Sure. And people were laughing.
Hey, you got to try things out to see if they're good or not. Here's a Dryad Militant. Experiment 1 is going to evolve into a 2/2, so Finnegan is the aggressor here. Musser is going to be on the back foot this game. We'll see exactly how aggressive Finnegan can be. Again, his creatures right now, they're a little bit small. He does have the Tristani in his hand. He also has the Celestial Charm as well. but Musser's going to look to probably try to accelerate and get maybe to Oaks of that range or something of that nature. Really try to turn things around back in his favor.
Dan Musser playing a classic archetype, Junk, and it's, I think, the kind of inheritor of the old school version of Junk when the deck came out in 99, 2000. And what I mean by that, it's an aggressive deck. Like, you're not seeing the aggression right now because of his land and, you know, he did mulligan, but this is a deck that runs a lot of cards that can start swinging sideways pretty quickly, and the rest of the cards, removal.
Yeah. Here's a Call to Conclave. 3/3 token coming, Evolution on Experiment 1 coming as well. Unfortunately, Giant Militant's going to remove that instead of placing it in the graveyard, but not a big deal, as, again, Finnegan's going to be able to come in for 5 points of damage. And now here's one of the things about Musser's deck is now he's behind the 8-ball. He's just got some tap lands in play, and is he going to be able to stabilize with something like a Loxodon Smiter? I think he does have one in his hand, but I also think he has a dual land in his hand too, so he's going to have to go down to 11 and try to stabilize with the Smiter.
And he does take the pain down to 11. And remember, Erik Finnegan's deck has all kinds of tricks that it can run. It can run a Selesnya Charm, it can run our Rootborn Defenses. Heck, what if he just cast Unflinching Courage while Musser's tapped out on one of these big creatures?
Yeah. That's the difficult thing here. Even Selesnya Charm, a card that we do know that Finnegan does have in his deck, and I believe right now in his hand, makes it so that any blocks that Musser has with that Smiter are poor.
I mean, the only block he can do where he'll still manage to kill the creature is the Dryad Militant, and honestly, that's not a great block.
Yeah, and that'll be a trade.
Yeah.
Too, and I think if Finnegan just turns everything sideways here, Musser is just going to ask himself the question, all right, what's the best block for me? Can I even beat Selesnya Charm? If he has it, which of course we do have the privilege of knowing that Finnegan does. So I'm going to be interested to see how Finnegan goes about his combat step here, because everything does look favorable.
I like that move. And he does go for the trade. Show me the Selesnya Charm. And if you do, that's 2 cards for my 1 card.
I think that's a trade that Finnegan's probably very, very happy to make. He's going to be able to get that Smiter off the board, deal 6 points of damage, put Musser down to 5, and if he has a follow-up play too, it means he's still going to be ahead on the board. So I think that this is a very, very good spot for Finnegan to be in. I would cash in that Selesnya Charm at this point.
If there was a Rootborn Defenses, would you cash that in?
No, I would rather just. I think I would rather just Selesnya Charm. I mean, this means that Advent's going to show up. That's what this means. I don't think there's anything Musser can do about that.
Dan Musser does have his own Advent in hand. He's shy on the mana for it.
And you saw Musser drew a Doomblade this turn, Adrian, and I think that makes things. I mean, it doesn't really change anything, right? Because if Finnegan does have the Advent of the Worm, what's going to happen? He's going to cast Advent of the Worm. You know, Spirit One's going to evolve into a 4/4. Musser's going to have to Doomblade the Advent because he can't let Finnegan untap because of Rootborn Defenses. And then we'll see Finnegan attack with his creatures, and I think the Selesnya Charm will actually be the card that does wrap it up here. So pretty crafty play there by Finnegan by not casting the Selesnya Charm, just standing his ground because he does have, it feels like, at least, he has Advent in his hand.
And Dan Musser, did he just say go?
I think he did just say go, and there's your 4 mana, there's your Advent, and there's your Doomblade on the Advent.
Yeah, he doesn't want to have a Rootborn Defenses prevent that Doomblade from doing anything there.
Yeah, has to kill it right away. And that's going to evolve that Experiment 1 into a 4/4. And as I think we're just having a quick chat with the judge to make sure everything does go okay here with the triggers and all that good stuff. There's your untap, and there again is a Selesnya Charm in Finnegan's hand. Just draw Rootborn Defenses for the turn. But go for it!
And he should know there are no cards in Dan Musser's deck. Yep, boom. On to game 2. Yeah, but before that, we have one winner of this game, Erik Finnegan up the first game, but we're going to start the call for another winner, the winner of the Star City Games Premium Trivia Giveaway.
Yeah, and so I'll explain the rules. You ready for a question?
Absolutely.
All right, well, very briefly, again, full year being given away. Adrian's going to ask you a question. Make sure you do hashtag your answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium on Twitter. We will select one of the people who do get the answer correct at the conclusion of this round. So again, it's about accuracy, not speed. Make sure you hashtag your answer, with the hashtag of SCG Premium. Adrian, don't make it too tough.
Don't make it too tough?
No.
Okay. Then should I make it really easy?
Intermediate.
Intermediate. Okay. It won't make it too tough then. Right. So, one of the things that we saw in this event was a bestow creature. A bestow creature that has seen a lot of play in this top 8. what bestow creature has made it to the top levels and has been seeing play in more than one of the decks in this top 8? What bestow creature is being played in more than one deck in this top 8?
If you do know that answer, again, hashtag your answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. We'll be announcing one winner at the conclusion of our final round, right before we do have our winner's interview with Glenn Jones in the sideboard, as we'll cut back to the match for you guys and take a look at these sideboards here between Erik Finnegan and Dan Musser. Musser going to be on the play this game, so I'm going to let you take a look at that one here. He got ran over pretty quickly there.
Yeah, he stumbled on his mana. He didn't have a lot going on. His sideboard, 3 Thoughtseize, 1 Doomblade, 2 Golgari Charm, 1 Hero's Downfall, 2 Underworld Connections, 1 Sin Collector, 3 Unflinching Courage, and 2 Shadowborn Demon. You know what's interesting about this sideboard is that practically all of the removal is something that he could consider running. Now, Golgari Charm doesn't really do much in the way of removal in this matchup, but it does play a nice, cheap copy of Rootborn Defenses.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fake Rootborn Defenses. And we were talking earlier about the problems of cards like, say, Druid's Deliverance when you're going to decide whether to attack or not. This is one of those rare matchups where I think that the Sin Collector might be good in a creature matchup. He has a lot of targets that are really worth hitting. Advent's Rootborn Defenses, Selesnya Charm, Call of the Conclave, but then also from the sideboard, I actually expect to see more cards like Rootborn Defenses and the possibility of a card like Glare of Heresy, since Dan Musser himself is running Elspeth, is running Loxodon Smiter. I think that there are a lot of things that are, and just, it's going to be a very interesting set of choices for Dan. The cards I'm really confident about are the 2 Shadowborn Demons and the Doomblade and the Hero's Downfall. But what I'm kind of wondering about is whether or not Sin Collector, Unflinching Courage, or Golgari Charm come in. But that is way too many cards to board in.
Yeah, that's a lot of options. I mean, it's good to have options, but does he have a game plan formulated? That's the question here, because of course he didn't know who he was going to play against, but he didn't know the green-white was a deck in the format. So let's see if he has a game plan for a green-white strategy overall. As you take a look at Finnegan's sideboard here, Musser knows it as well. 2 Pithing Needle, 1 Centaur Healer, an Unflinching Courage, 2 Druid's Deliverance, 1 Rootborn Defenses, 2 Sundering Growth, a Tristani Selesnya's Voice, 1 Ajani Call of the Pride, 3 Glare of Heresy, and a Hunt the Hunter. Hunt the Hunter, I think, is a pretty good start. Pretty easy one to bring in here. The rest of them, I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Where we saw him leave an Unflinching Courage in the previous matchup, but in a green against the mono green deck from Chris Renner, where I thought he might sideboard it out. But this matchup here that he's playing against, Musser has removal, so he does have the chance to get 2 for 1.
And a lot of removal.
Yeah, so that's a little bit scary. I don't know if he's going to bring that Unflinching Courage in. Don't like Centaur Healer and Green Mirrors, of course, more for your mono red decks. Pithing Needle not going to have a lot of targets in this particular matchup. Rootborn Defenses, do you want the 4th one there? Yeah, I mean, I think the first one's really good. I'm not sure how good the next couple copies of that card are. I agree with you that Glare of Heresy is actually good in this matchup, but how many do you want? I think that's a very valid question. Ajani does have the potential to steal a game, but also has the potential to get outclassed pretty quickly. Tristani as well, but I don't know if we're ever going to get in that board stall sort of situation. So a lot of options here for Finnegan. He being up a game, he just wants to get up to that aggressive start like he had the last game and just push Musser over before he can get his feet set.
I mean, I think that this matchup is going to be a matchup of one player destroys the other player. And the question is, does Dan Musser stumble while Erik Finnegan just grows a huge army of monsters? Or does Dan Musser just dismantle creature after creature and leave nothing left?
It's a very real question, and that's an answer that we're going to find out for you guys very shortly. I'm very interested to see exactly what's going to happen here. Green-white up a game, but Dan Musser's junk deck. And again, Dan's super hungry for a win. He does have a runner-up finish or 2. He's top-8 in multiple of these bad boys. He wants to win this tournament. His back is against the walls. He looks at a lot of Advent of the Worms, a couple of lands.
He keeps that quick.
All right.
As does Erik Finnegan.
Finnegan draws an Advent of the Worm for his turn. He's going to start off with, and it's Spearmint number 1.
Second turn, we see a Voice of Resurgence for Dan Musser.
Powerful card.
Voice is one of those cards that once it was printed, immediately made people change the way they played Magic, much like Miracles did when that first came out. I can't tell you how many people I saw mess up Voice of Resurgence in early playtesting. Like, oh yeah, oh, never mind, I don't want to do that at the end of your turn. No,
Got to learn that trigger part. And it's a big thing. It's pretty obvious against blue, but you also forget that sometimes when you're playing against a black strategy, they have instant speed removal that they cast in your turn. You don't want to forget the trigger there either. And I do see it happen quite a bit. I'm actually guilty of it as well.
Interestingly, the Voice of Resurgence does mean that cards like Rootborn Defenses are less powerful.
We see here Musser missing his third land drop, but he does have a land or elf. Again, Finnegan's deck doesn't have any removal outside of Selesnya Charm. Obviously not going to take down the Elvish Mystic, but for Musser, he wants to stay ahead and press his advantage. I like not attacking here. I'm perfectly fine with that. As here's a Call of the Conclave from Finnegan. He's going to evolve both of those Experiment 1s. But for Musser, he needs to draw land next turn so he can play Advent of the Worm. He wants to stay ahead of this. He wants his Advent of the Worms to be aggressive, not defensive. And
there's a land. What kind was it, though? I couldn't see the art. I just saw that it was a land. Hopefully it's not a temple. Is that a Godless Shrine? There we go. That is not a temple. Many cards in Dan Musser's hand. We see a Hero's Demise, a Doomblade, 2 Advent of the Worm, I think another Voice of Resurgence. I'm not 100% sure of that one. And then the Godless Shrine in hand. Dan Musser, he says that he's not one to shuffle around his cards very much. He likes to look at them and then put them down.
Yeah.
There you can see putting them down. Starts with a Smiter. Lays a Shrine untapped. Sorry, tapped, pardon me. And on the other side of the table, the 3/3 Conclave and a pair of 2/2 Experiment 1s.
Let's see if Finnegan has a 4th land, because we know he has at least one Advent of the Worm in his hand. How does he want to go about starting to set up this game here as we do move our way into the mid-game? Creatures are going to start gumming up the board. It's going to be a big creature fight. You do see that Finnegan has a Boon Satyr in his hand as well, which can evolve those Experiment 1s. And that's what it looks like he's going to do. He's going to cast it on his main phase, make these 3/3s. That means he does not have the 4th land, just passes the turn back. So Musser gets out of this turn pretty well, getting to untap here, having access to his Advent of the Worm. He draws Abrupt Decay for the turn. I think Musser has 2 copies of Advent to go along with the Hero's Downfall, an Abrupt Decay, and a Mystery card over there.
Now, if you're wondering why Boon Satyr was cast by Erik Finnegan during his own turn, recall that there's a Voice of Resurgence on the other side of the table. Voice of Resurgence doesn't care if you're blue, it cares when you cast your spells. So, make sure that you're not misthinking about what Voice is doing. It says when an opponent casts a spell during your turn. Doesn't care if it's a creature.
Yeah, oftentimes you think about that as an instant or a sorcery. Well, not sorcery, excuse me, but as an instant.
Yeah.
The first thing you think of is, this thing bricks counter magic, or it bricks Azorius Charm, or I get a guy off the Sphinx's Revelation. But again, Boon Satyr is a card that you'll get something from that. You'll get something from a Doomblade or a Hero's Downfall being cast on your creature in combat, something like that.
Yeah.
So you don't want to forget about those things. Again, I normally think of it as just a card that's awesome against blue, but it does have text in other matchups.
Yeah.
Same thing with Advent of the Worm, for example.
Yep.
You're going to have to cast those in your main phase when there's a Voice out there.
I know that early playtesting, again, when Voice was printed, we've seen attack. All these 3/3, 3/3s, and then a 4/2 at the end. In early testing, Restoration Angel was a very, very early culprit with Voice of Resurgence. Oh yes, I forgot.
Yeah. It does happen quite a bit here. Now this reeks of a Rootborn Defenses, this attack. Just everybody coming into the red zone, it smells bad. It smells like Rootborn Defenses, and I think that's what Musser's thought is, and he's thinking to himself, all right, what can I do about this card?
And we see one solution is to just put a huge creature in the way.
Yeah.
You see the Rootborn Defenses in Erik's hand. After he did the attack, Erik waved his hand across the table. I imagine he was saying, these are not the droids you were looking for.
So let's see exactly how Musser wants to go about blocking here, because again, it's pretty obvious that Finnegan does have Rootborn Defenses in his hand, and you actually may have caught a glimpse of the Rootborn Defenses in his hand. So if that's the case, I think you put the old Worm on the Boon Satyr, I think you put the Smiter on the Conclave token, and I think you may just let the Experiment 1s come through, but you actually might be happier with letting those die.
Ooh,
the Voice die.
I like this block right here, because he's trading in that Voice for a 4/4.
Sure.
That's pretty solid. There's the defenses.
Obviously, nothing's going to die on Finnegan's end, and I think that Musser knows that, and he's happy with letting his Voice die. So, Voice is going to die, get the token there from the voice dying, you're going to get yourself a 4/4 elemental token because nothing's going to die on Musser's end, nothing's going to die on Finnegan's end. But Musser actually has a pretty good attack next turn because he's got a 4/4, 2 of them with the smiter, so that's 8 points of damage, plus 5 from the worm, makes it so it's going to be 13 if he wants to get in the red zone.
Now, let's pretend he had a whip in hand.
Yeah?
That would be pretty sick.
Yeah. Also, one thing to keep in mind too is that Musser in his hand right now, he has Abrupt Decay and Doomblade, 2 spells that he can cast. So if it's going to be like this kind of racing situation, where we're just going to go back and forth in the red zone, he can just take care of 2 creatures right now while Rootborn Defenses is down. So take care of a Boon Satyr with a Doomblade, take care of a Call the Conclave token with Abrupt Decay, get in there, and I don't think it's possible for him to die on a counterattack, and it might force Finnegan to actually be the one playing defense, which is actually where Musser would like his opponent to be. So let's see exactly what Musser wants to do on this turn, because this turn I think is the crucial one. I think he wants to turn into the aggressor. I don't think he wants to keep playing defense in this situation, especially when you have an opponent who doesn't have a 4th land for Advent of the Worm. I think you just want to press your advantage as best you can.
I think if he does the other play, he's just giving his opponent an opportunity to start actually matching the big creatures that he has. Right now, for example, that extra worm in hand, with that elf that's there at the bottom, the 3 lands, he can cast that and have an incredibly powerful set of tramplers. It would be 10 power of tramplers after an attack for 13. That seems like a pretty good start. Is he at least going partly in?
Yeah, I mean, I want to attack with something here. I'm not exactly sure, you know, the perfect cards to be attacking with here, but I want to start getting aggressive here because I want to get in the red zone. I want to do my opponent some damage. I want them to think about maybe not attacking. I just want to start getting in, and Advent of the Worm is going to begin combat, so Finnegan's going to go down to 15. Don't think Musser has a land to play this turn, but of course he does have that other Advent of the Worm, which is, you know, if he's going to pass the mana up, it's pretty obvious that he does have one. I think Finnegan can, you know, adjust accordingly.
And I see he leaves Erik to his own turn, so his 2 removal spells and his Advent of the Worm, he could do some combination thereof. It could be just the Advent, or it could be Abrupt Decay and Doomblade.
Now, Finnegan drew a Temple Garden for his turn. If he wants to play that untapped, it's going to bring him down to 13. That is not irrelevant. That damage actually is going to matter in what looks to be a damage race moving forward. But it's going to allow him to cast his own Advent of the Worm. So now both players could potentially have a 5/5. But as we did mention, Musser does have those 2 spot removal spells in Doomblade and Abrupt Decay. So how relevant is that 5/5 from Finnegan right now? Hard to say. One thing that it will do is it will make those experiment ones into 4/4s as well. So the combat stage of this game is getting a little bit muddy.
This is true. Now, the Advent of the Worm in Erik Finnegan's hand would tap him out, which would mean that there would be no opportunity for something like a Rootborn Defenses to be able to populate it. It's surprising, actually, how much Erik Finnegan's deck prefers to function on a lot of land. We see just the attack here, Boon Satyr, a pair of Call of the Conclave Centaurs, and then 2 3/3 Experiment 1s. That's for 4, 7, 10, 13, 16 damage currently.
I was a little bit surprised to not see Finnegan play his land untapped pre-combat. I don't know if he, like, if he plays his land untapped pre-combat, that Temple Garden, yes, he goes down to 13, but he can represent Advent of the Worm, which represents 2 Experiment 1 triggers happening. Right now, this is basically a loud declaration that I have another Rootborn Defenses, and how much does Musser actually care about that, I think is really interesting. Musser looks like he's going to go to blocking here and not cast Advent of the Worm before blocks. It looks like he's just reaching, doesn't want to give away that he has Advent. I think this is very interesting.
If he does this block, that's 10 damage that would be coming through in theory.
So again, those Experiment ones are 3/3s. So you're looking at 4/4 Elemental token there for Musser, a 4/4 Smiter in front of those 3/3s. Again, that's part of the reason I like playing the land first, so that you can actually have Advent of the Worm. This attack, this damage that's going to come through, yes, it's 10 points of damage, but Musser goes down to 7, not 0. And as we know in the green-white decks, there isn't really any reach. Here is Selesnya Charm.
Ooh, is that on a token, an unblocked token? I mean, he might not have been targeting that. He might have just put the card forward and declared another target.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. What this...
Oh, exile.
Okay, sure.
There we go.
Sure.
He's exiling the worm.
So this is what this is going to do, is turn that into a 3/3, but I actually like this. So now this Advent play is fantastic, because now he doesn't use the Advent, forces the Selesnya Charm, Advent, make my guy a 4/4 again. So you exiling my worm doesn't actually end up mattering very much. My elemental token is still going to win. Yeah, you get to regenerate both of your guys, but what do I care? Because I think we might be seeing a lethal counterattack. 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. 5 plus 8 is 13. Ooh, it's going to be 14. So he's not there yet. But if Musser has a creature, it's lethal.
He has a smiter.
But Finnegan, all right, places his land tapped.
Wow.
Now, the thing is, if he would have played that land untapped, I think that would have been very, very interesting for Musser. If he plays that land untapped and goes to 13, he can rep Druid's Deliverance, because now Musser is going to kill him really, really fast here. He plays the Smiter, he gets in for exactly 15. You see the combat math.
Yep.
Elemental token's a 5/5, Worm is a 5/5, Smiter plus Mystic is a 5/5. So that's exactly 15 for Musser to tie this up. Imagine if Finnegan plays that Temple Garden untapped and goes to 13. Does Musser move in? Does he move in there with the fear of Druid's Deliverance, which he knows that Finnegan has in his deck list because they get to see each other's deck list in the finals? That makes things really, really interesting.
Yeah, and besides that, it also means that there's the possibility of Selesnya Charm.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
like, I certainly don't go all in on that because I die in the Counter-Strike.
But the big thing there that makes, I feel like Musser outplayed Finnegan in that game, and the way that he did that was on that last attack by Finnegan, where it had been so easy for him to just cast Advent of the Worm and put my blockers up, but he says, I'm not going to cast Advent of the Worm. Maybe he's got a read on him for Selesnya Charm and says, here are my blocks, the damage that you're getting through does not matter. Forces Finnegan to actually cast the Selesnya Charm to try to actually take care of that elemental token. Musser goes, that's fine, it's going to tap your mana low, I'm going to recast another Advent of the Worm in my hand, make my elemental a 4/4, beat you in combat, and now your mana tapped so you don't have a great follow-up, and I know that I can kill you if you have nothing, and that's exactly what happened. A really, really well-played turn there from Dan Musser.
It was super well sculpted, and one of the things that was really interesting to me is I believe he had 3 removal spells in his hand that he didn't end up casting, and it wasn't that they were dead in his hand like we saw that lightning strike in the Yurin Lin match in the quarterfinals. It was that he just didn't end up needing them. They were live the whole time.
Yep. Really well played game as we're going to move on to a third and final one here. You see Erik Finnegan, he was shuffling. It looks like he may be thinking about going back to his sideboard. Musser taking a look through his 15 cards in his deck box, as well as his main deck configuration, deciding to himself, okay, do things change if I'm on the play or if I'm on the draw? How happy am I about my my configuration here in a third and final game where, boy, do I want to win that trophy finally. And Finnegan says, I think I'd like one, actually. Make things tough on you.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Cedric Phillips, and you have come at an excellent time. You are about to see the final game of this standard tournament. 406 players, 9 rounds of Swiss, down to these 2 players. Dan Musser giving us a look there, right at the camera. And I know that right now, I feel like Dan Musser being on the draw against this deck, which can put out some very, very aggressive cards, he's got to be a little bit worried. His answers are good, but they start at 2 mana, and that can mean he could be just trying to play catch-up unless things go his way.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what Finnegan's start looks like. Again, he's got a lot of 2-drops. He's only got a couple 1-drops here in Experiment 1. You're not going to find Elvish Mystic in his deck list, but he's got a lot of 2-drops. Again, Fleecemane Lion, Call the Conclave, Selesnya Charm Token, Voice of Resurgence. He does also have Dry Militant as a 1-drop in this matchup, but I think that's a pretty stinky 1-drop in the Green Mirror, so you don't even know if he left that card in. But yeah, he can get the ball rolling pretty quickly. We saw in Game 1 where Finnegan just went Experiment 1 and a Giant Militant into just beat your brains in. And really got an aggressive start going, and I don't think Musser wants to be put underneath that kind of pressure. He does want the games to go exactly how we saw in the last one, which is, let's get into the mid to late game, where some of my cards can really start to take over. I can find a card like Obsidian and get that going. I can get Whip online. I got my Advent of the Worms, maybe possibly get an Elspeth Sun's Champion to play. Elspeth Sun's Champion, if Musser can get to it, might be able to win the game on its own. And that's a big deal in this matchup.
Especially because one of the things that Erik Finnegan doesn't really have is much in the way of trample. Advent of the Worm is basically it, and he could have Unflinching Courage, but as we've already discussed, Unflinching Courage is not particularly great against a deck with Abrupt Decay, Doomblade, Hero's Downfall, and that's one of those things where Elspeth could lock it out.
Yeah. And Elspeth's just making a bunch of tokens, gumming up the ground, kind of getting into, again, that board state where I think Musser would be incredibly happy to be at, which is, let's just gum things up. Let's make combat difficult for you. You know, I think Musser's mind frame in this matchup might be, okay, I might be the more skilled player, so I'm happy with the game's going along because you might make an error in judgment. You know, the longer I'm able to just gum things up and get in just an ugly board state, the better things are off for me. Because I know that's one thing, if you play limited Magic, one place that I'm actually comfortable is when there's a bunch of creatures on the board and no one's really sure if they can attack. Because, you know, there's a chance that your opponent actually just moves in too soon, maybe waits too long to move in, and, you know, deciphering what's great or what's the correct play in those board situations is incredibly, incredibly difficult. So if you feel like you have a skill advantage in the matchup, that's where you actually want to get into. Yeah, that's just this ugly, ugly game.
That's interesting you say that, because one of my friends, Brian Cole, he says he likes to build decks that make the board look ugly, and he'll make plays and he says, you know what, I'm making a play that if you give me a letter grade on it, it's a B-, but I'm pretty sure my opponent's going to get a D, because they're even worse at dealing with a gummed up board.
Yeah. You want to get yourself in situations that you feel like favor you. I think that's the situation that favors Musser is getting into that just ugly board stall situation where it makes his draws live, because I think his draws a lot of the time are going to be better than Finnegan's draws. And Finnegan's going to take a mulligan immediately here, going down to at least 6 cards on the play. But the thing for Musser's deck is that it takes him a little bit of time to get to that board stall situation, especially when he's on the draw. That means that mana acceleration is going to be paramount for him when he's on the draw. He needs a Mystic, he needs a Caryatid, he needs to get off to a pretty quick start. Doesn't look like he's happy with that hand, so he's going to go down to 6 as well.
Double 6s here. Now, both of these players, they've had a long weekend of Magic already, and I know that Musser, at the very least, is looking forward to the Legacy. Legacy comes up next. I'm pumped about that. But right now, in our standard match, you brought up something really interesting about Elspeth being able to just gum up the works and maybe be a card that's very hard for Erik Finnegan to be able to defeat. But there's also that possibility if Erik Finnegan taps down, Dan could drop an Elspeth and just say, you know what, I see you've got 4 7/7s over there. How about they all die? How about they all die?
And if what we saw from Finnegan is any indication of how he wants to play this matchup or play against opposing green decks, he actually just runs his Voice of Resurgence tokens into the red zone, so they trade up into an elemental token. He's basically saying this 2/2 body sucks, so let's get this out of here. I want to block with it immediately or attack with it and hope you block it immediately. Get this thing into a 4/4 or a 5/5. So if you look at creatures that are 4 or greater for Elspeth's second ability, we're basically going to just say the Voice of Resurgence. We can count Boonsader, of course. Fleecemane Line, not going to die once monstrous, because it can't. But Advent of the Worm as well, and then with those populates off of Rootborn defenses, that's going to make another big creature too. So he might be able to catch, as you mentioned, a couple creatures off guard with that Elspeth ability and be able to win the game that way. Again, I think Elspeth is going to play a big role in this matchup, but it's hard to say how much a role a 6 mana card can play, especially when you have the potential to get beaten down quickly, like we saw in the first game.
And we see the Dragon Shields coming on out.
Dan, you get one more. There you go.
He's like, wait a second. I see land, I see spells.
There's multiple Boonsaders over there. The question is, does he have double green? I know he has a Temple Garden, does Finnegan. He also has the Plains. Does he have double green to cast the 4/2 bestow creature?
I see Caryatid, Doomblade, Advent of the Worm, and 3 land for Dan Musser.
Yeah, I think Musser's hand is great right now. He's going to start off with Overgrown 2 and pass the turn back. He's not under any immediate pressure. We'll see if Finnegan has a 2-drop. I think this is the big test. He's got a Fleecemane Line. Okay.
That's a good one.
So things are going to get started here for Finnegan in a good way. There's a Sylvan Caryatid. This is a big draw from Dan because now he's able to skip the curve, get up to Advent of the Worm really quickly, and maybe even get into Obes that range as the Lion's going to come in. Going to put Musser down to 17, and we know again that Finnegan does have multiple Boonsaders in his hand, so Musser's going to be put to the test here pretty quickly.
Right here, Pain from Temple Garden. It looks like 2 Temple Gardens. We know there's a worm in there. We know there's a Doomblade. Is that a Scavenging Ooze that's also in there?
I think that might be hiding out over there. And there is your Ooze.
That's the Ooze. And I believe that's a Shadowborn Demon amongst the friends there.
Now what I'm really curious to see here, yeah, you see Musser saying, okay, Boonsader resolves. Hold, please.
Die, 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 die.
Again, because he has to worry so much about Rootborn defenses countering a spell that he has to cast something right now. You see Finnegan say, don't kill anything. I've got the shields up over here. Now, the important thing to note here, Adrian, is that, okay, he's got the opportunity to Doomblade 2 different creatures. You can take care of the 4-2, or you can take care of the Fleecemane line. Fleecemane line gets better as the game goes because of the Monstrous ability. Dan says, I'm going to show you the Doomblade. I'm trying to figure out what to target. I like targeting the Fleecemane line here so that my Scavenging Ooze can just trade immediately with Boonsatyr and leave the board clear.
That's me. I'm with you. I'm exactly with you. Because you might not have mana to be able to activate that, that Scavenging Ooze anytime soon, and your life total... 15 feels like a lot, but Erik Finnegan's deck hits hard. It's a deck with Advents of the Worm. It's got a 4 power on the table. What if something goes wrong, like there's a Selesnya Charm and he just tramples on over? I agree. Get rid of the 3/3 before it becomes something even more problematic. And also then force Erik to have another card to make the trade on the Boonsatyr work. There we go. Dan Musser also agrees with us. Untap.
Funny that Finnegan draws for his turn. He draws another copy of Fleecemane Lion. I'm really interested to see if Boonsatyr is going to come in here and try to offer up a trade. I think if Boonsatyr does come into the red zone again, I think Musser is going to block immediately.
Oh, yeah. I would block in a heartbeat. I've got my Advent later to have a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the off chance that we are just really undervaluing Scavenging Ooze in this matchup, because right now, Musser, if he does take the damage, he goes down to 11, then he can push himself back up to 13 from double Scavenging Ooze activation. So is he happy making a trade at this point in the game? I don't know. And it looks like... Okay,
yeah.
So he is going to trade. Basically what he's saying here is if you have Rootborn defenses, that's fine, that's your turn.
Yeah, spend your mana.
Yeah. That'll be your entire turn. I'm perfectly fine with that trade. If you have Selesnya Charm, that's kind of annoying because you get to trample over for 4, but again, that's probably your turn, and that is going to be Rootborn defenses. And again, I think Musser is thrilled with this trade because Temple Garden's going to come into play tapped, and that's Finnegan's turn. So again, Musser is the control deck in this matchup, especially in this game when he's on the draw, so he's got to be thrilled with how things are going. Sitting at 15, scrying with Temple of Silence, having Advent of the Worm up, and being able to pass the turn back.
Yeah, that was a great turn for Dan Musser.
Now, Finnegan plays a 5th land, and you know he's going to get in the red zone again. If you're Musser, you've got Advent of the Worm, but how good is Advent of the Worm right now? Because, I mean, you want to block, but there's the threat of that Boonsatyr bestowing and actually taking care of your Advent of the Worm and replacing itself, and that's exactly what you're going to see here now. So bestow a Boonsatyr on here. Get rid of that Advent of the Worm. Give me that Boonsatyr in play. So Boonsatyr acting is just an expensive removal spell, but it takes care of the 5/5.
Imagine that Boonsatyr not dying there.
Shadowborn
Demon you.
Now Shadowborn Demon is going to end up dying now, so it's like a, what do we call that? Just like a really expensive 5-mana brain spoil. Just like a super expensive 5-mana removal spell.
He might eat the Caryatid. We'll see. Oh, look at that. He does eat the Caryatid.
We're getting in the red zone?
He's doing the math now.
I mean, we're looking at 2015 for life totals. He could tie it up. Really, really scary thing here for Musser, and I'm not sure there's anything you can do about this, is you take a look at the 4 mana over there for Finnegan. That reps Advent of the Worm. So it's really scary if Finnegan goes, all right, play Fleecemane Line, pass, Advent of the Worm, end of turn, get you for 8, potentially 9 with Monstrosity. But can Musser afford to play defense this turn? I'm not entirely sure.
Dan Musser with a Shadowborn Demon, a 5/6 flyer. His graveyard not full enough of creatures to be able to stick around. He's playing the kind of copy of Lord of the Pit right now. Another Sylvan Caryatid. Ah, wow. Might be trying to see if he can... He's going for it.
All right, he's getting in. I kind of like it. Now, I'm not sure. Finnegan may have no cards in his hand, too. Okay, so yeah, he's cardless, so he doesn't have to worry about Advent of the Worm. And right now, the thing that's on the table is Monstrosity on the Fleecemane Lion.
No blocks from Dan Musser, I would say. In for an extra monstrousness. All right. Indestructible hexproof.
So that 4/4 is never going to leave. Bye-bye Caryatid. I think Musser needs to draw another creature here. He draws. I'm not quite sure what that was.
Was that an Advent, maybe? I think there was a spell, though.
Yeah, I believe it was a spell as well. He hit it pretty quickly. You see him reorganizing his mana. Is he going to get in the red zone again with this demon? That would put Finnegan down at 10, but Musser will go down to 7. So can he keep going here? Boy, I'll tell you, the whip would have been an insane draw this time.
Oh, man. Dan Musser on the right with Junk, trying to decide what his play is going to be.
We are in the nitty-gritty right now, my friend.
5 land, a Shadowborn Demon face off against 6 land, and a monstrous Fleecemane Lion.
Does he regret not having that Scavengers anymore? I think that's the big question. He's got a spell to cast, I think. Okay, there's a land. A real tough decision. Does he attack? Does he not attack?
In.
Right. Finnegan's going to go down to 10.
I think he's got an Advent of the Worm in hand.
I would be very impressed if this is an Advent. I think he's done a really nice job of masking it. Voice the draw for Finnegan this turn. Not sure what the kind of impact Voice is going to have on this game. For Finnegan, do you attack? I mean, your creature doesn't die. I think the one thing you have to worry about is only Advent of the Worm. But how much do you care?
He goes for it.
All right.
What do you got, Dan? If there is a Voice in hand, unless he's going to use mana for, I don't know what, I would have cast the Voice before attack.
Yeah. All right, so here's 5. What is this? Oh.
Okay, well, never mind. That makes that's a good reason not to do it.
So Boonsader's going to go on to the Lion.
Wow, and Dan Musser with nothing.
2 lands. Erik Finnegan defeats Dan Musser 2-1. Green-white aggro defeats Junk, which means that Erik Finnegan is your Star City Games Standard Open champion here in Cleveland, Ohio. Congratulations to him. One hell of a game 3 there.
Wow.